Hey everybody, Fatman here, and today we're going to be looking at a little studio called
Illumination! Illumination!
Owned by Universal Studios and launching its first film in 2007. You might most recognize this studio for somehow having the magic demon powers to pull the wool over everybody's eyes and making them think that it is, for whatever reason, okay to spend billions of hard-earned dollars on yellow Tic Tacs. Not as creative as Pixar and nowhere near as bold as DreamWorks, Illumination Studios somehow found its niche audience and made their shtick work, continuing to produce mildly okay to not too bad work to this day. I wouldn't be able to call myself an animation buff if I didn't make myself sit down and suffer through their body of work. So today we're going to be taking a look at Illumination Studios' animated films and ranking them from worst to best. Now I know what you're thinking. Illumination itself is directly responsible for producing 10 films, 9 of which are animated. So why not just include the 10th film? And there's a very, very simple answer for that. Because cop. That's why. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Number 9, The Secret Life of Pets 2. We open with 2016's The Secret Life of Pets 2, and yeah, this one is far and away the worst one for me. While the first film was by no means a masterpiece, it wasn't bad for as far as Toy Story clones go, and it even managed to get a few laughs out of me. This sequel, however, was just 86 minutes of flat characters and just boring storytelling, boring and inconsistent. Remember those old direct-to-video Disney releases? The ones they always marketed as a brand new movie, but really it was 3 stories that had nothing to do with each other strung together with the weakest narrative of all time. And they were done whenever Disney wanted to turn one of their movies into a TV series, but wanted to kind of test run it first, you know. Think like Tarzan and Jane or Atlantis, Milo's Return, you know, crap like that. Yeah, well, this is essentially what this movie is, except it's marketed as a theatrical film. Not a single one of the stories showcased here is even the slight bit interesting. They just barely fit together, and we jump back and forth so infrequently at such a messy pace that sometimes it's just long enough for a character to spout a stupid catchphrase or to watch a character leave or enter a room before jumping right back to another story that we don't care about. Kevin Hart is as annoying as ever, and the only redeeming point I could give this movie is that Patton Oswalt as Max does a great job replacing Louis C.K. from the first film. Other than that, everything that was once interesting about these characters is absent, the soundtrack is dated by about 20 years, and there is not a shred of story to be found. Number 8, Despicable Me 2. Have I mentioned that Illumination's really bad at making sequels? Because they're really bad at making sequels. After the massive success of the first film, a sequel was all but guaranteed, but good God, man. Despicable Me 2 really tries to hammer in the evil to good route with its protagonists, but it never once feels earned. We don't spend nearly enough time with Gru and the girls, and most of the relationship stuff is kind of focused on some teen cliche crap going on with Margot. However, I would normally be able to forgive all of that, because that just means Despicable Me 2 is an inoffensive, bland mess. Or at least that's what I would be saying if these stupid yellow idiots weren't everywhere in this movie. Holy crap. They cram the minions down your throat so many times in this movie that it relegates our main characters to side characters. And it's such a sharp contrast from the brief bits of comic relief they were used as in the first film. They're not funny or charming at all here. And there are legit several instances where I felt like the writers did not know how to bring the story from point A to point B. So instead of trying to write a story, they just shoved the minions in there with all the subtlety of a drunk yak. Sometimes it's to blabber mindlessly for a few minutes, and other times it is to sing an entire full-length song sequence in the Minions' native language of Minionese, which if you haven't figured out what that is by now, pro tip, it's just bullshit. Along with the ham-fisted way the family messages are jammed in here, this sequel is just borderline torture. Number 7, The Lorax. How bad could this be? Well, the answer is very, very bad. After a barrage of insulting Dr. Seuss adaptations, Illumination decided to try their hand with 2012 CGI abomination, The Lorax. While not as terrible as some of the other big screen Seuss films, The Lorax still suffers from a misguided direction, and everything that makes the original story's message so powerful just falls completely flat on its face here. Cringe-inducing pop culture references, casting Taylor Swift, and these little shits basically being a dollar store brand version of the Minions are just a few of many examples of this movie's awfulness. And while admittedly this isn't the worst Seuss adaptation, it most definitely is not a good one. Number 6. Minions. Did you like that, boys and girls? Would you like it if I did nothing but that for 90 minutes? If you answered no, then congratulations. You either have brain cells left or you have avoided having children thus far. If you answered yes, well then, Minions is for you. Congrats. So I'm sure many are wondering why this movie didn't kick off this list, and allow me to explain. Minions, in every single way, delivers exactly what it promises. It doesn't hide behind a unique premise or an interesting story. It doesn't reel you in and then deceive you, and hell, I can't even deny it. I got a few laughs out of this thing, which is really more than I could say for any film on the list prior to this one. That being said, many people like to blame the world's problems on the current political regime, whoever's leading what country at the time. They blame it on murder or war or crime. Well, I blame it on the fact that this movie made over $1 billion. $1 billion for Minions. Let that sink in. Number 5, The Secret Life of Pets. I'll be blunt here. Take a moment and think about any cliche or trope you've seen in any kid's movie at any point in time ever, and I guarantee you that The Secret Life of Pets hits probably 8 out of 10 of them. Nothing here is that creative or interesting, and it doesn't throw you for any kind of loop that you didn't see coming a mile away. The story is also just a carbon copy of the first Toy Story film, so if you've seen that, you've seen this. Just swap out Woody and Buzz for Max and Duke. Taking all that into account, there are a couple of laughs to be found, mainly from Gidget, who is portrayed beautifully by Jenny Slate. And the characters do have just enough heart to keep the audience engaged. Before the sequel mucked it all up, there was a solid foundation for a franchise here, and while I honestly can't recommend this movie to you, I can say that The Secret Life of Pets is a pretty harmless watch. Number 4, Despicable Me 3. Brother! Well, with only a few more films to go, this is the point of the list where everything becomes okay to good. Yeah, there's really no A-listers here, just roll with it. And Despicable Me 3 is no exception to that rule. While still not a perfect movie by any means, Despicable Me 3 fixes a lot of the issues that its predecessor suffered from, bringing the focus back to Gru and his family and lowering the involvement of the Minions by about 30%. There's still a small side story involving them, but they made $1 billion on their own before this, so there was no realistic way they were sitting this adventure out. The real joy here comes from watching Gru interact with his long-lost twin brother Drew, both voiced masterfully by Steve Carell. The writers wrote distinctly enough for both characters that you never have trouble telling who is who, a joke they immediately reference, by the way. Surprisingly, I found myself laughing a lot here, and there's a scene where Agnes questions a bartender about a unicorn sighting where I was literally laughing out loud. This installment just brings the fun and wholesomeness the first movie executed so well back into the fold. And when you add to that an extremely meta villain, voiced to perfection by South Park's Trey Parker, we finally have a movie on this list that I can suggest, even if you didn't like Despicable Me 2. Number 3, The Grinch. Yeah, remember all the crap I talked on the Lorax? Well, this Dr. Seuss adaptation has almost none of it in my opinion. Illumination's 2018 take on Dr. Seuss's The Grinch actually really works for me. And there are almost no pop culture references, which shows huge self-restraint and is the way Seuss should be approached. And with the exception of a god-awful rap remix of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, the score here is solid. But you have Danny Elfman, so, what can you expect? Great producer. It's nothing jaw-dropping, but it's certainly not bad, and it fits most of the scenes quite well. For those familiar with the original story, they really don't do that much different with it, but they do take a couple of liberties here that I really did enjoy. For one, they do actually show in great detail the Grinch prepping and planning to steal Christmas. They don't just gloss over it, and to me that's really interesting, considering we've never really seen it in detail. Maybe we didn't have to, but I thought it was a nice touch. The scene where he recruits another reindeer named Fred is actually pretty funny and has a surprisingly sweet resolution to it, even if it's ultimately pointless as the Grinch's dog Max winds up pulling the sleigh again. The montage of the Grinch going house to house stealing Christmas is, man, I'll just say it, it's freaking epic. Like, seriously epic. It's absolutely mesmerizing and just bursting everywhere with creativity as we watch a new take on this sequence, where the Grinch has just invented several hilarious and unique gadgets to help him on this heist. Illumination also nails the ending, resulting in the only change from the original that, no joke, I think 100% works better here and fits more with the Grinch's character. And I won't spoil it in case you want to watch it, but it is a really touching scene. That being said, if we're talking overall, the original animated version of the story is still the best version of the story, ultimately giving this version a bit of an unnecessary feel. Benedict Cumberbatch is also doing a very odd accent here as he voices our titular character, but at least he's not trying to channel Karlov, which I think works out in his best interest. As far as animation goes, though, this movie is visually stunning, and there were a couple of times where I had to pause just to soak in all the little details going on the screen. Is this the best version of this classic story? No. Is it worth a watch? I would say hell yeah. Number 2. Sing. Sing. Yeah. Sing. In my top 3. I liked it. As a matter of fact, I really, really liked it. Like, I genuinely consider this a good movie. Yeah, I wrote the script for this video, and even I'm still kind of surprised. Look, we've seen the singing competition thing in hundreds of movies and TV shows. The liar reveal cliche is here, which is like my most hated movie trope ever. Most of the music is absolute garbage, with popular junk from the time like Call Me Maybe or Shake It Off. And yet, the character work is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Not only are the characters visually engaging, but they all have distinctive personalities, actual motivation. There are stakes, there are fleshed out backstories. There are heavy emotional moments, especially with Johnny and Rosita. I don't get it. I don't understand. Without ever feeling like it's trying too hard, Sing delivers on everything Illumination has failed to do up to this point again and again. It's unbelievable. For this story, all of the effort went in, and it paid off. The voice work is also loaded with personality, and everybody here is giving their all. Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, Reese Witherspoon, Taron Egerton, even Seth MacFarlane. Everybody knocks it out of the park here, and maybe that's why these characters in this movie feel so lively. The delivery is on point, and every character in this movie is animated so brightly and creatively that every movement feels fluid. Every action is vibrant, the slapstick works, the humor works. Sing is a movie that just works. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. I highly recommend it to you. And finally, without further ado, it is number 1. Well, we've arrived, and my favorite Illumination movie, if you haven't guessed it yet, is Despicable Me. Illumination somehow just hit the ground running with its first effort, and it managed to gross $500 million amidst a modest budget, and went on to spawn a franchise worth billions. I can confess to straight up loving this movie. On my first watch, I was blown away by how unique this felt. The characters were all just extremely likable, and Gru was evil to a T, something you didn't typically see in kids' movies around the time of release. The morality and theming was paced expertly well for a kids' flick, and it was strung very evenly throughout. Rather than dumping it on us in the third act last minute like most kids' movies do. The minions were actually funny here, and I actively wanted to see more of them, as well as this evil genius and his newly adopted daughters. The animation wasn't too bad, and even by today's standards, it hasn't aged half bad. Before it was everywhere, it was special. And I can't think of a more deserving movie in Illumination's catalog to top this list. And that's a wrap. Every Illumination movie from worst to best. Illumination, if I'm being brutally honest, is really nothing special as far as animation studios go. When we have studios like Disney, Pixar, and Blue Sky actively pumping out hits almost every single time, there's really no reason to stop and take a look at Illumination's catalog. That being said, there are a couple of really strong films to choose from. And hey, you never know what can happen in the future. And I look forward to seeing what they have planned for the future. Neat. For that, I have been Fatman, and you have been watching ZeitgeistOG. Please subscribe, like, hit that stupid little bell to stay up to date on all the notifications. And I know we've been gone for a while, but quarantine life and this pandemic has been pretty rough. So stick with us. We ain't done yet. We have a lot more to come. Thank you all for watching.